two for our town attorney to get here. He's call this meeting of the Town of Clayton Board of Adjustment to order. Welcome, everyone. Second item on our agenda is the adjustment of the agenda. Do we have any adjustments? Ben? No adjustments to the agenda. Third item is approval of our minutes from the January 18th, 2023 meeting. I trust everyone has had an opportunity to review those. Any changes, corrections, revisions?
Yes, I want to make one revision under number 5, adjournment, where it states February Board of Adjustment meeting canceled based on board consensus. Just to add to that, that the board didn't decide just to not have a meeting, but there was nothing on the agenda, and we decided not to meet as a result of that. With that change, I'll move to approve.
Yeah, we have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, we have two public hearings this evening, items 4A and 4B. We'll start with item 4A, case 2023-07- variance Clayton Logistics Landscape variance. And our presenter this evening is Bruce Venerable. Welcome, Bruce.
Good evening, Chair, Board. Just for the record, my name is Bruce Venable, Town of Clayton Planner 1. I'm here to present the request for the variance for this project. The request is being made to reduce the number of plantings that are required by code of the town's Unified Development Code, specifically the interior landscaping requirement. The use for this site is industrial. The property size is approximately 23 acres, and it's located off 853 Shotwell Road. The section of code in question that they're seeking the relief from is section 155-402D1, sections A, B. It states as follows: 20% of the total area shall be landscaped. 1 canopy tree, 1 understory tree, and 2 shrubs shall be planted for each 1,000 square feet of landscape area required. Trees need to be evenly planted throughout the landscaped area, but may be staggered or clustered as necessary to maximize visual and screening objectives, and to meet the needs of the particular species of plants for root space, water, light, and air circulation. Landscaping provided within vehicle use areas may be counted towards the site's interior landscaping requirements. Resource conservation areas may be used to satisfy a maximum of 40% of required landscaping area as well. Here you can see the aerial image of the site, some site details. There are 2 warehouses on site that are under development. Warehouse 1 is approximately 126,000 square feet. Warehouse 2, square feet gross area. Warehouse 2 is approximately 109,000 square feet gross area. There is going to be about 10,676 square feet of office within these warehouses. Just to bring up to speed, the parking requirements per code is 1 space per 1,000 square feet of warehouse space, 1 space per 200 square feet of office space, bringing the total to above, I'm sorry about this, it's cut off a little bit because of the start bar. The total parking provided on site is 269. This is after a 10% reduction that is permitted in our Unified Development Code 155-401, where the planning director can make that decision. Here is the approved landscape sheet from the original site approval. This was actually an administrative amendment that was done to try and address landscaping issues. Previous approval had this cluster in the upper left-hand side lower towards the stormwater retention pond. In this AA, they attempted to move the plantings up there to kind of give them more space because they were even more cramped below. Just some of the details from the approved plans. The requirement, as we mentioned, is 20% of the space. So here we can see that they are meeting that requirement by having, landscape area. There's 2.58 acres of interior landscaping, and then they had a resource conservation area of 1.89 to meet their overall 20% requirement. They provided the totals here. They were going to have 125 canopy trees, 125 understory trees, and 250 shrubs. Here is the new proposed landscaping sheet. As you can see here, there's quite a difference in the number of plantings. There's less crowding. All of the required interior parking landscape trees are present. The required buffers are present along Shotwell Road and into the property to the south. And here is the total numbers for the new proposal. They came to the proposal by reducing the area of where the plantings could actually go and survive. So their proposal now is to reduce that and bring it to 32 canopy trees, 24 understory trees, and 48 shrubs as to meet their interior landscaping requirements. I will note that also that the standards for impervious surfaces for this zoning district is 75%. They are currently at 56%, so they're nowhere near hitting their impervious limit. And that the building coverage is 50%, and that their current building coverage is below that as well. I will allow the applicant to address their findings of fact to you in a moment. I'll just read over the 4 findings of fact that they're required to cover here, and then I'll provide a minimal staff commentary for it. Number 1, unnecessary hardships would result from the strict application of this ordinance. It shall not be necessary to demonstrate that in absence of the variance, no reasonable use can be made of the property. As the site has been developed and built out, There now exists the possibility that strict application of this ordinance may result in undesirable outcomes, which may result in additional financial responsibility by the property owner to replace and maintain these plantings should they be enforced as in the approved plans. Number two, the hardship results from conditions that are peculiar to the property, such as location, size, or topography. Hardships resulting from personal circumstances, as well as hardships resulting from conditions that are common to the neighborhood or general public may not be the basis for granting a variance. Environmental and physical constraints are present on the site in the form of steep slopes, wetlands, established resource conservation areas. In addition to this, as we can see in the plans, there is a large stormwater detention pond that was required in order to meet the stormwater management requirements. Staff will note that they do not consider the size of the parking or the buildings to meet the requirement or the standards of an undue hardship. The hardship did not result from actions taken by the applicant or the property owner. The act of purchasing property with knowledge that circumstances exist that may justify the granting of the variance shall not be regarded as a self-created hardship. The applicant will speak to some of these hardships that exist, especially topographical areas, steep slopes, and such. Staff agrees that these areas do exist, especially on the south and east side of the property. And as the site was built out and developed, there now exists the possibility that, again, there might be some financial hardships related to maintaining and following the strict intentions of the ordinance. Staff, again, will reiterate that the applicant was aware of this town's requirements for the interior landscaping and the plantings during the development and review process and still chose to proceed forward. And finally, number 4, the required variants are consistent with the spirit, purpose, and intent of the ordinance, such that public safety is secured and substantial justice is achieved. Staff's response to this, we believe that the applicant is attempting to achieve the intent of the ordinance, given factors of steep slopes, wetlands, and the requirement for such a large stormwater retention pond. We feel that meeting the needs of the street trees, the buffers that are required, and then the interior landscaping where they can put it is attempting to meet the intent of the ordinance. Some considerations: the Board of Adjustment shall review and make the final decision regarding the variance application. Conditions may be imposed by the board to protect the property values and the welfare of the general public. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. I can go back to any slides if you wish to see any of the plans closer.
Thank you, Bruce. Any questions for Bruce? And Bruce, I had just one question. I'm sorry. Just for the record, this site plan was fully approved and construction drawings approved and obviously under construction now.
Yes, they received a full approval for site plan construction drawings and even an administrative amendment trying to address the landscaping issues.
My question is under number 3, the applicant response. It says there are cut slopes on the north and east edges of the property and fill slopes on the south and west sides of the property too. Forgive me for not understanding. Are these cuts that they made in the development of this land, or is this something that existed when they submitted the original site plan that showed that they could meet the requirements?
Sure, I'll let the applicant speak to that too. From my understanding, a lot of the topographical issues were present before, and then the applicant during development graded where it was possible in order to put the building structure and the stormwater retention and the parking spaces. But the applicant can speak more to that. Mm-hmm.
Any other questions of Bruce before we hear from the applicant? Thank you, Bruce.
Oh, Chair, I would remind that we do need to swear in those who will be speaking in this meeting.
Absolutely. So this has been noted as a quasi-judicial hearing. Anyone planning to speak on this matter, I'd ask you at this point to please rise and staff will swear you in.
I do solemnly affirm that the testimony that I'm about to give is true to the best of my knowledge and belief. and the applicant is here as well.
Now, we'll hear from the applicant, and if you will, please state your name and address, please.
Good evening, Chair and members of the board. I'm Mark Frederick with Parker Poe, Adams and Bernstein at 301 Fayetteville Street in Raleigh, North Carolina 27601. I'm here on behalf of the applicant, Landmark Industrial, who is currently developing the site. I'll start off by asking that our application, presentation, case report, and the supporting materials be accepted into the record.
So noted.
Thank you. I'm joined tonight by Dave Williams of Landmark Industrial and Mike Davidson with the Timmons Group. This variance relates to the development at 853 Shotwell Road, just south of the Carolinas Distribution Center. And to provide some context to this project and the variance request, this site has gone through a number of approvals in the past few years to get to this point. And hopefully this is our last hearing. Following a recommendation for approval from the planning board, this site was rezoned to the light industrial district in August of 2021. Since then, the site plan and construction drawings received administrative approval in order to allow 2 warehouse buildings with a total of 236,000 square feet of gross floor area, along with the required infrastructure and landscaping improvements. As you can see on this aerial image, this site is currently under construction according to the approved site plan. While a rendering is no longer necessary to provide an impression of what the building will look like due to the fact that the construction is well underway, I've included this rendering to provide an idea of what the buildings will look like when delivered. The 2 buildings are designed for light warehousing and life science users with smaller local and regional tenants in mind. The buildings can accommodate showrooms in the front with flex space and warehousing space to the rear of the structures. This is distinguishable from the development to the north, the distribution center, which is designed for larger, more frequent transportation needs. And the timing of this variance request is also not what this board is likely familiar with. These requests are typically presented to you during the site plan phase when these UDC compliance issues are identified and typically dealt with. However, this project is much further along in the process with construction nearing completion. This was a decision made by my client during the site plan review when the interior landscaping issues were identified. Instead of mitigating the risks of compliance during this site plan review, the decision was made to move forward with the project in an effort to get this project to the market. Speed to market is really important with this type of project, and especially with attracting tenants to the town of Clayton. So while the site plan was approved with a landscape plan that complies with the UDC requirements, this issue was identified during the site plan review phase of the project, knowing all along that we would likely need to come back for a variance request and an amended site plan. So with all of that context in mind, we are here tonight to request a variance to the interior landscaping requirements. The specific UDC section is 155.402D, which requires all site plans, regardless of the type of use, to provide landscaping on 20% of the total site area. This requirement is in addition to the perimeter buffer requirements and the street yard landscaping requirements. In order for this variance to be granted, we have the burden of producing the information and evidence as to how this request meets the findings described in the UDC. We do have a landscape architect who designed these plans here tonight to provide that information. So at this point, I would like to call up Mike Davidson. Mr. Davidson, please state your name, address, education, and experience for the board.
Sure. Board, my name is Mike Davidson. I'm a registered landscape architect here in North Carolina, and I've been doing civil engineering work and landscape architecture work here in North Carolina for over 20 years. My office address is 5410 Trinity Road in Raleigh. Have a Bachelor of Science from the University of Tennessee, and again, have extensive experience with all types of land development projects here in North Carolina.
And what is your role in this project?
I was the senior project manager and for all things civil, and also manager for the landscape architecture design.
I would now like to tender Mr. Davidson as an expert in the field of landscape engineering.
So noted.
Mr. Davidson, could you please walk the board through the factors driving the layout of the landscape plan and the relief we are seeking?
Sure. I think the main thing to point out here is with the section in the ordinance that we're here tonight for is to discuss the interior landscaping that requires 20% of interior landscaping for the entire site area. So it's not just the developable area or the amount of area that we're building on or paving, but the entire lot. So regardless of what type of use would have been proposed on this lot, the same number of plant material would have been required because, again, it's based on the total tract area, which was mentioned before was about 23 acres. The slide that you're seeing here, as mentioned by the planner, was presented and approved by planning staff in July of 2022. This plan complies with all UDC requirements, including a perimeter buffer to the south, and also the street yard buffer along Shotwell Road, including additional parking lot landscaping that's required within the islands of the parking areas. The rest of the planting material that you see is all because of that 20% requirement for the total lot area. So as you can see, there's an extraordinary amount of plant material. You know, and as mentioned by the planner earlier, there are a significant amount of steeper slopes on this site, a large stormwater impoundment, floodplain, sanitary sewer easements, a lot of stuff going on this site. And so our plantable area was really restricted to the areas that you're seeing on the plan, which really forced a lot of material to be planted in a small space. There were some areas above the stormwater pond that you might see and think to yourself, oh, we perhaps could have planted there, but those are sloped areas. One of the main things that we're using to protect those slopes is sodded lawn, Bermuda. Bermuda grass requires 6 to 8 hours of continuous sunlight to be healthy and thrive. If we were to shift those trees down to those embankments, I feel like we would probably lose that lawn and lose that soil holding capability on the slope. So that's why we chose to put everything along the north there, as you can see. That's the existing conditions plan, and Ms. Berry, that I can help address the question that you had earlier about the slopes. You know, I don't know how much the board is familiar with reading topography, but the closer those lines are together, that represents a steepness of slope. So you can see up along Shotwell Road, it was relatively flat to begin with, but then grades started to steepen and fall off towards the back of the lot before we started doing any site work. In land development, the first thing we look at is trying to balance the earthwork. We don't want to haul dirt off. We don't want to haul dirt in. We want to just spread it around and try to do it that way. It's most economical for the client. It's better for the environment. Everybody seems to win in that condition. So In doing so, we did create some slopes along Shotwell and along City Dump. But again, that was an effort to balance the dirt so that no dirt had to be removed or brought in. Again, the development of the site is not challenging because of the specific use that was proposed. There are other design considerations to make this development, that made this development challenging regardless of the use. And that was, again, as I mentioned earlier, the floodplain, sanitary sewer easements, requirement for stormwater, steeper slopes, et cetera. If we can go to the approved landscape plan now. There we go. So again, one of the main considerations for landscape architects is not only to comply with the standards in a particular municipality's ordinance, but also for sustainability and thrivability. We've got a lot of material there that's really encroaching on each other. I would really like to see those, more areas for planting, to spread those out, to give those trees more room to thrive and survive. But again, we're limited by the amount of topography and steep slopes that we have, and we just really don't have any place else to put them. Is there any questions that I can answer for the board at this time? Yes.
Has there been landscaping currently done right now to it?
I'm sorry?
Has there been any kind of landscaping done already to it right now?
No plant material has been installed yet.
I have a question. You stated that Bermuda grass requires so many hours of sunlight. Is it your testimony that other shade tolerant grasses cannot be planted there?
So Bermuda grass is a warm season grass, which does much better in this region than what we would call a cool season grass, which would be fescue. It's my professional opinion that Bermuda grass is best for the site. It's an aggressive grower. It has a fibrous root system that really does a great job of holding the soils in place. It's an aggressive, fast grower and does best in sunlight, lots of sunlight.
But my question was, are you saying that those grasses would not perform there? Fescue would not perform in this environment?
That's my opinion, yes, in this region.
And then my second question is, were you consulted whenever the original site plan was created, whenever it was demonstrated that they would make the plantings that are required by the town?
Was I aware of this condition in the UDO?
No, were you consulted when the original site plan that showed the plantings was submitted?
Yes, I was.
Okay. And it was your professional opinion then that those plantings could be made when the original site plan was created and submitted to the town for approval?
Again, it was an opportunity in order to close on the property, we needed to get site plan approval. It was always our intent to come back to the town to request a relief on that standard.
I had just a couple questions. As far as we're talking about the 20% interior plantings, so that does not include the buffers, perimeter buffers, street yard. This is strictly internal to the site.
That's correct. So the planting material that we're required to provide for the buffers, perimeter buffers, and the street yard do not count towards the interior landscaping requirements. That's a standalone, separate item.
Right. And in the presentation earlier, we talked about the proposed number of trees versus what was required, and we're just landscaping. As far as percentage now, if we put this back in percentage, 20% is required. What, on your revised landscape, what percentage of interior plantings?
I don't have that number in front of me. We felt like the best approach was to look at, instead of looking at the entire lot area, was to look at, let's remove the areas that we physically cannot plant on. such as the driveways, such as the buildings, those, such as the floodplains, such as the stormwater pond. And so that theory or thought process is what resulted in the proposed calculations, and what we're requesting from the board is we don't have a problem complying with the 20% rule, but let's apply it to the areas that we can physically plant on, not building, not parking areas, not a stormwater pond, steep slopes, et cetera.
In your opinion, what would you say your percentage of meeting that 20% is now?
It's a complicated formula, and I'm sure staff would agree with me. There's a lot of variables that go into that 20%. It's not just a 20% of the overall lot area. There's other exclusions. I mean, I can go through it line item by if you want, but I don't think I can give you a specific number that I think you're looking for.
Okay. Yeah, I was looking at it as that is the requirement, and how much of a variance are we actually being asked to grant?
Sure. And I think what you're being asked to approve is requiring us to adhere to the 20% rule, but of the plantable, but the areas that are actually plantable, which are the open spaces, the spaces that we can physically put those trees in the ground. That is the request. Yes.
If I may, real quick, the current calculations with that 20%, after we remove the resource conservation area and the parking lot landscaping, that the current the calculations under the UDC requirement, the acreage of that would be 2.85 acres, or 146,000 square feet, that we would need to provide landscaping on. Under our proposed calculations, we've reduced that acreage down to just over half an acre, or 24,000 square feet, if that answers the question.
Any other questions from the applicant?
Yeah, a couple. Looking at the plan, site plan, I didn't see your final grading plan. I didn't have enough time to look at it, but there's two areas. There you go. One of them directly to the west and to the east of the larger retention pond, that looks pretty flat. Curious why there aren't any plantings other than a tree row and some shrubbery north and south of that little finger going out towards the west.
So Mark is using the pointer. Is that the area that you're referring to?
Generally, yeah, that's square.
Yes. So that is outdoor storage that was previously approved. So it's going to be a gravel lay down yard.
Oh, it is?
Yes, sir.
Okay. It's pretty flat. Then there's another area where you've removed most dense plantings just to the north of the westernmost building, right there.
Yes.
And I noticed that when your revised plan really has an absence of any plantings there whatsoever.
Right. We're on the approved civil drawings, that area was identified as future vehicular parking, with the understanding that it would have to come back to the town, back to planning department for review and approval. But that area was always earmarked, if you will, for parking for tenants.
Well, I'm just to kind of parse that out a second. The approved plans that Chairman had noticed before, made note of before, showed that as planted area, correct? Not as parking.
Mm-hmm. Well, it was initially intended to be future parking area. There have been tenants that have indicated a desire to use that area for parking. Again, that would have to be reviewed and approved separately by planning department. But that is one of the reasons why we're requesting to remove some of those plant material. And again, plant to the areas that are actually available. So on the revised calculations, that area was included in the area that we're using to meet the 20% requirement. We're just choosing not to plant there.
I understand. What is the acreage of that particular parcel, that spot?
That spot, I don't even have,
Can you wager a guess at the dimensions of that area there?
200 by 200, 4,000 square feet.
Okay.
One additional question. Was that noted on the approved site plan as future parking?
I believe that it was.
Yeah, Mr. Farrakhan?
Just in follow-up to Board Member Antoine's comments, if that became parking, correct me if I'm wrong, but you would have to add islands and plantings as a part of that. So
That's correct.
you're holding back with the intent that if it does become parking, there will be additional plantings there as part of the island structure.
That's correct. In the initial site plan approvals and discussions with staff, it was made clear that we would have to come back to the town for approval for that redevelopment. And so an approved landscape plan would be required for that as well, meeting all current standards.
Okay, so those would be additional plantings over and above what
Yes, sir.
you're showing right now?
Yes.
And you would not come back and look for a reduction in any of the ones you're asking for now?
That's correct. Again, perimeter buffers, street yard buffers, and landscaping that are in the islands don't reduce or don't impact the interior standard at all. It's separate and standalone, so that has no impact on it.
Any further questions for the applicant? Is that the end of your presentation, or did you have?
Yeah, I'd like to briefly summarize the evidence you just heard as it relates to the findings. With respect to finding one, as Mr. Davidson described, the unnecessary hardship in this case results from the strict application of the UDC's interior landscaping requirement. That strict application results in the hardship related to the installation and continued sustainability of the landscape plan that does meet the UDC standards. With respect to finding number two, the hardship results from the significant existing sloping topography on the site. That topography informs where landscaping can be placed, which in turn creates the hardship. With respect to finding number three, the hardship did not result from actions taken by the applicant or the property owner. The hardship is a result of this specific site's topography. We also understand the timing of this request appears to complicate this finding, but similar to how the act of purchasing property with knowledge that the circumstances exist does not qualify as a self-created hardship, the fact that a site plan has already been approved should not qualify as a self-created hardship. And finally, with respect to finding number four, the requested variance is consistent with the spirit, purpose, and intent of the UDO because it will allow a more sustainable landscape plan that can be appropriately maintained over time. So with that, we are available for any additional questions, but we respectfully request that you approve this variance request. Thank you.
We have one more question for Mr. Farrakhan.
In the event you pursue the additional parking, is there any requirements that are going to change the stormwater control measure, the retention pond, that would in fact have some impact on the landscaping that we're discussing tonight?
I think Mr. Davidson could probably speak to that, but to my understanding, because we showed it as future parking on the original site plan, the stormwater control devices were designed to handle that in the event that it did become future parking spaces.
That's true. There will be no impact to the stormwater pond. It was designed, anticipated that it would be paved at some point.
Mr. Antoine?
Yeah, one more question from the engineering perspective. it looks to me as if instead of 20% interior plantings, we're close to 3.4% after you make your adjustment. Can you just double check that?
Can we go back to the calculation slide, please? So if you look to the right, we've got the existing site area, which is actually closer to 25 acres. Of course, some of that area is within a public right-of-way and 50-foot wide NCDOT easement, so we took that out, of course. Net site area was 23.72 acres. And then what we did at that point was identify all the areas that were physically not able to be planted. And so that's where that, I believe it's, my eyes are terrible, but 16.6 acres. So remaining plantable area was 7.1 acres. And then we identified the areas that we estimated could not be plantable. So we identified those. And then we took the 20% of that remaining plantable area to satisfy or to use for the landscape calculations, which was 1.4 acres. As was mentioned by staff, we did obtain some credit for resource conservation area retention. So we took that credit. What we were then remaining with was 0.55 acres or 24,000 square feet. And then the calculations, struggling to see it now, but yeah, one canopy tree and one understory tree for every 1,000 square feet of that 24,000 square feet. And then 2 shrubs for every 1,000 out of that 24,000. So that's how we ended up where we did. Again, removing the areas from the calculations that we simply cannot plant on.
Okay, so I just want to kind of paraphrase. I think what you're trying to tell us is that your new calculation, does it comply with your interpretation of what the UDO is requiring based on that new calculation?
Yes, in my opinion, it does.
Okay, that's framed differently than what you're asking for. The variance you're actually asking for is a variance upon the approved plans, not necessarily the UDO. Is that correct?
Well, Mark, we want to speak to this, but a strict interpretation of the ordinance, they require that 20% calculation to be taken off the entire lot area. You know, we're asking the board to consider a reasonable approach, which is a lot of those areas cannot be planted on. You know, can we apply that planting requirement to the actual areas that are able to be planted?
Yeah, so the variance request is not for a variance from the approved plans. It's a variance from the specific UDC section that requires the 20% landscaping. So instead of meeting that 20% requirement, we've come up with a modified calculation that gets down to, the calculation there is the 24,000 square feet that we're providing the interior landscaping for compared to the 124,000 square feet under the UDC requirements. And I can do that calculation real quick to get the percentage if you like.
No, I get the spirit of what you're trying to do.
I think so. It would be fair to say the proposed calculations we're looking at applies the code to the plantable area, that the areas that may be or can be planted. We're taking out the areas that cannot be.
Correct.
Gotcha.
Yes, and it's based on the original site plan approval. So we would have had to request this variance during site plan approval if we had decided to do it, you know, in that that sequence of events.
Any questions from the applicant? Any further questions? Okay, thank you. Thank you. We're good, thank you. I'd just like to ask if staff could come forward and just basically confirm for the record that the area that we were just discussing that had the cluster of plantings was indeed shown as future parking on the site plan. If you could just confirm that, Bruce.
Yes, Chair. Move this to the appropriate screen if I can find it for you. The applicant came, the original site plan was approved prior to staff's arrival for the town. This particular is from the administrative amendment that they filed and requested that moved plantings from the southeast portion of the site to that new location there in order to meet their required interior landscaping planting requirement by just having the plantings moved there, though. If I may provide some further clarification for questions that were asked. The new area is including 0.85 acres of the conservation resource area, which approximates to 37,000 square feet. That, in addition to the 24,000 square feet, comes out to about 61,000 square feet, which is about 5.9 or 6% of the overall site. Just to provide clarification.
So Bruce, I may have missed it. So either the amended plan that was approved or the original site plan did note that area as future parking?
If the approved site plan did show it as future parking, the amendment removed that. They amended their site plan, and now this is what, as far as we're concerned, needs to go there unless a grant variance is granted and the site plan is amended again.
So the amended plan did not show that?
No, the amended plan shows the landscaping there. The applicant is within their right to later on request and provide a new application, which then would go before the entire technical review committee to determine whether or not it's reasonable and fair.
Understood.
If I may, the amended plan was just the landscape plan. The other site drawings that did indicate that it was future parking was not part of that July 22 submit.
The approved landscape plan, the approved amendment is the governing document for this. That site is now landscaped as far as the town is concerned.
Okay. Any questions from staff over here? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, if there is anyone in the audience who would like to speak on this matter, you may come forward and identify yourself with your name and address. Anyone wishing to speak? Okay, hearing none, we'll close the public hearing and bring this back to the board for deliberation.
Because of the clear confusion on the parking portion of this, would it be worth considering a time limit that if it isn't pursued for future parking, that it be considered as part of the area, the plantable area, and the 20% applied to that, and provide a time limit for that to be addressed within, so that if it's never used, it does get planted with something.
That's very reasonable, and I'll ask our attorney to confirm, but we may add conditions upon our decision.
Absolutely, Mr. Chairman, you may. Just a reminder, this is a variance request, so a 4/5 vote is also required to approve the variance, but it may be approved as is, or it may be approved subject to supplemental conditions that you all may set.
And I would note all members tonight are voting members tonight. So. Any further discussion?
In that section, that they have X amount of time in order to submit, get approved additional parking. That time expires, then the application of the 20% rule includes that area.
Yeah, ready to talk. Cool. Fact that this parcel here that is heavily populated with trees is then intentionally not included. This is that it would be parking later. On the landscape drawing is the covering. That's. And to exclude that now or use a calculation that it's not part of that is, I think of Rebecca's concern. I don't know what words are wrong. That doesn't sound just logical to me. Very.
Can you press that so everybody can hear you?
Did everybody hear me? Did everybody hear what I said, or should I repeat myself? Okay, so I echo what Rebecca is concerned with. The town approved a landscape plan that included plantings in a proposed theoretic parking area. The town approved this landscaping plan, assuming that it would be plantings, not a parking space, right? And in my opinion, that's what made this project go forward. In fact, that's legally what happened here. To come now later and exclude that as not plantable area skews the calculation to even a lower percentage than what would be obtained if we were to use that as planting per the submitted and approved set of landscaping drawings. So I'm in agreement with what Rebecca has said, that a time limit exclusion doesn't seem appropriate because we don't know what the future use is. We're approving the plans as they are. And that, I think, follows in spirit with what council had mentioned, that we're supposed to take the drawings as they are regardless of what stage the construction is in. So I'm looking at this as we don't know what the future use is. And I think that area as proposed as planting is fair game to have plants on it.
And I want to add to that. I mean, this idea that, well, we want it approved and we'll come back later and ask for it. I mean, people could build over the entire spot and say, well, there's only 5 acres left, so let's take 20% of that, of a 1,000-acre plot. That's a slippery slope to go down. We're looking at very thoughtful development of our town, and for developers to come in and to say, well, we knew whenever we submitted this that we were going to change it. I think the town needs to have a good idea of what they're approving and that that's going to be consistent, that we're not going to keep going back and changing it or allowing people to change the rules after they've already developed the land and then went to recalculate. And so I really believe that's a dangerous precedent to set for the town.
And I would say there's a couple items that really stand out in my mind. Number one, for us to consider a variance, we're sitting here looking at a plan that shows that the plantings can fit and meet the code. And I think staff's statement that the current approved site plan does not call for this to be future parking, makes it very, very difficult in my mind to meet these findings of fact, or to say that these findings of fact have been met. That's just where I'm at the moment. Any more discussion? There's not one. I'll ask the town attorney, would it be appropriate for us to take these findings of fact one at a time, or can we take a motion? And I think we have done that in the past, and if the board does not object or have any more discussion, we can take the findings one at a time. Finding of fact number 1, unnecessary hardship would result from the strict application of the ordinance. It shall not be necessary to demonstrate that in absence of the variance, no reasonable use can be made of the property. Any thoughts on that?
By their own admission, a landscape architect was consulted at the time of the original planning, so I don't believe there's an undue hardship at this stage.
And I think it goes back to, we're looking at a landscape plan that shows how it could meet the ordinance. All right, if nothing else, we'll move to finding of fact number 2. The hardship results from the conditions that are peculiar to the property, such as location, size, or topography. Hardships resulting from personal circumstances, as well as hardships resulting from conditions that are common to the neighborhood or general public and may not be the basis for granting a variance. Any comments? Okay. Finding fact number 3, the hardship did not result from actions taken by the applicant or the property owner. The act of purchasing property with knowledge that circumstances exist that may justify the granting of variance shall not be regarded as a self-created hardship. Any discussion on finding fact number 3? All right, finding fact number 4, the requested variances are consistent with the spirit, purpose, and intent of the ordinance such that public safety is secured and substantial justice is achieved. Any discussion on finding fact number 4? All right, with that, I'll entertain a motion. Okay, thank you.
I'd like to move to deny the application for variance.
Okay, we have a motion from Mr. Antoine. Do I hear a second?
I second that motion.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right, moving along to our next item, item number 4B, 2022-192, Summer Glen subdivision variance. We'll hear from.
Good evening. So this is the variance for the proposed Summer Glen subdivision. It's a variant. The variance is being requested from the requirement to install roadway and associated improvements along the frontage of the proposed development as required by the town's Unified Development Code. The property proposed for development is currently vacant and is located along Glen Laurel Road and Vinson Road. The UDC requirement from Article 6 is on your screen there. Essentially, it's a requirement through our subdivision article that for subdivisions that they have to install frontage improvements in accordance with the town's transportation plan, which, based on a resolution that the council has approved, is currently the roadway map in our comprehensive growth plan, as well as a couple on their documents. But for this case, the comprehensive growth plan, transportation map and the comprehensive growth plan is what governs. This is an aerial image of the property outlined in red there. And this is a proposed subdivision layout that has been submitted and is currently going through a review for a conditional zoning district. This is the proposed roadway improvements that would be, that are recommended or required by NCDOT. And as you can see here, really the only road improvements that are going to be required are 100-foot-long left turn lanes at their entrances on Glen Laurel Road and a 100-foot-long left turn lane on Vinson Road at their proposed entrance. The Unified Development Code would require additional frontage improvements in addition to the NCDOT or TIA recommended improvements. As mentioned before, the NCDOT for this particular project is only requiring left turn lanes with approximately 100 feet of storage and appropriate deceleration area and tapers. The 2045 comprehensive plan in the roadway section recommends a 3-lane cross-section with bike lanes, curb and gutter, and sidewalks along both Glen Laurel Road and Vinson Road. This subdivision, the proposed development has approximately 1,500 feet of frontage on Glen Laurel Road and Vinson Road, and has approximately 700, 800 feet along Vinson Road. For the findings of fact, in the staff report, you'll see that the findings of fact are listed along with the applicant's response and staff commentary. I'm just going to briefly go through the findings and summarize some of the staff commentary on the findings, since the applicant is here to present after this. So the first finding is unnecessary hardship would result from the strict application of the ordinance. It shall not be necessary to demonstrate that in absence of the variance, no reasonable use can be made of the property. So just a couple of notes from the staff commentary. The amount of frontage improvements is related to the unique layout of the project and its location along Glen Laurel Road and Vinson Road. And the hardship that the applicant is referring to is related to their specific subdivision proposal, its layout, and the related roadway improvements recommended by the TIA, as well as additional requirements suggested by the NCDOT. Public road improvements are required of most, if not all, developments in the town. Finding fact number 2 states that the hardship results from conditions that are peculiar to the property, such as location, size, or topography. Hardships resulting from personal circumstances, as well as hardships resulting from conditions that are common to the neighborhood or the general public, may not be the basis for granting a variance. Again, in staff commentary noted that the size and scope of the required improvements are solely related to the proposed project and the corresponding use, layout, and density of the proposal, which does not constitute a hardship resulting from the peculiarity of the previously mentioned parcels of land. Finding of fact number 3 is that the hardship did not result from actions taken by the applicant or the property owner, and the act of purchasing property with knowledge that circumstances exist that may justify the granting of a variance shall not be regarded as a self-created hardship. The staff commentary noted that the hardship did not result from actions taken by the applicant or the property owner. The requirement to make public road frontage improvements is the same for most developments in Clayton. And finally, finding of fact number 4 is that the requested variances are consistent with the spirit, purpose, and intent of the ordinance, such that the public safety is secured and substantial justice is achieved. Staff commentary notes that General Statute 160D 804C grants the ability to regulate transportation and utility right-of-way and easement dedications to the town. As this is a public road, all improvements would be required to meet the regulations laid out by the town of Clayton and the state of North Carolina's Department of Transportation. Additionally, staff noted that TIAs generally only address improvements at intersections, not general mainline improvements. And generally, frontage improvements are required to address future infrastructure needs in town to better move vehicular, bicycle, and pedestrian traffic around the town. With that concludes the review of the findings. For considerations, Board of Adjustment shall review and make a final decision regarding variance applications. Conditions may be imposed by the board to protect property values and general welfare of the neighboring properties with consent of the applicant. The applicant is here and prepared to make a presentation, as well as I believe there are members of the public, and a staff member from the town is here as well.
Any questions from Mr. Howell? Yes, sir.
Normally, the council has responsibilities to shoot. Still need to swear. I was there that he's taking a position is very mistakes. It may find the decision made. There is some suggestion. The board's attorney, your attorney, with our law. Question. Should there be Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
And Chair, just as a reminder, we do need to swear folks in who are going to speak. And just a general reminder for the board, make sure when you do speak to hit the button on your microphone and speak into the microphone so that we can capture everything.
Ben, I had a question for you, and more just a confirmation. So the requirements for the curb gutter sidewalk, as mentioned earlier, they are in addition to anything the TIA may have required or NCDOT may have approved.
Yes.
Correct. And this subdivision has not been approved by the town. It is in for review at this point.
That's correct.
Any other questions for Mr. Howell before we hear from the applicant? Thank you, Ben.
Great.
Okay, for those who wish to speak on this matter, please stand and our staff will swear you in. So this has been noted as a quasi-judicial hearing, and we will begin by hearing from the applicant. Please state your name and address for the record, please.
Good evening, and thank you. Members of the Board of Adjustment, my name is Sam Morris, Longleaf Law Partners, 4509 Creedmoor Road, Suite 302, here on behalf of the applicant and the development team. I'd like to start by quickly requesting our application and presentation and other supporting materials be accepted into the record.
So noted.
I'm joined tonight by Brett Mangum from Wakefield Development, Andrew Stocks from Stocks Engineering, the project engineer on the case, and Brittany Chase with Exult Engineering, who are the traffic engineers related to this development in this case. We come to you this evening for the purpose of requesting relief from the substantial roadway expansion and development requirements associated with the subdivision and development of the Summer Glen residential project located at the corner of Glen Laurel Road and Vincent Road in Southeast Clayton. As our engineering experts will explain further shortly, the Town of Clayton's Transportation Plan or Roadway Systems Map, as it's adopted through the comprehensive plan, places unique streetscape designations along Glen Laurel and Vincent Road that impose substantial right-of-way expansion and developments that are unique to the surrounding area. And particularly when taken in context of this kind of rural intersection, all of which we believe largely do not comport with the development pattern in this area or its location within the town's planning jurisdiction generally. You'll hear specifically from a traffic expert regarding the results of a traffic impact analysis that we did on this property, which recommends less substantial, but still very meaningful right-of-way improvements on the kind of surrounding edges of the property. The TIA, of course, was reviewed and approved by the NCDOT. The UDC acknowledges that flexibility is going to often be required when applying the transportation plan's streetscape requirements, and accordingly explicitly empowers the Board of Adjustment to grant alternative streetscapes or configurations pursuant to the variance process. Such flexibility regarding these streetscape designations is justified where, as we believe the case is here, the particular context, shape, and location of a property results in strict application of the required improvements becoming so substantial that they become difficult, and even in kind of a highest and best use case scenario become practically, impossible, if not, impractical to absorb those costs into a highest and best use development. And so where strict application imposes like very high barriers to development, we do believe that that qualifies as a hardship on the property. And so finally, given the rural and residential nature of this area and the property assemblage's unique shape, full compliance with the transportation plan will, as you'll see in a minute, result in a somewhat disjointed system of roadway improvements that are very unlikely to be fully connected to a larger system anytime in the foreseeable future, and will ultimately result in what we believe is a less desirable traffic configuration at this site, and one that was approved again by the TIA. So Ben did a good job of going through the kind of background information, but just to go through that quickly one more time, this is the site assemblage located again in Southeast Clayton, roughly at that corner of Glen Laurel and Vincent Road. Here's an aerial view of the kind of existing conditions on the ground. And here is the current zoning, but as you heard, it's currently under review for a conditional zoning on the property. So with that, I'm going to ask Andrew Stocks with Stocks Engineering to come give a little more detail about the site specifics. I'm also going to kind of do the tendering him as an expert. So just real quickly, Andrew, can you just summarize your educational background, professional licensing experience?
Yes, absolutely. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. My name is Andrew Stocks. As you mentioned, I graduated from North Carolina State University with a degree in civil engineering, and I'm a licensed professional engineer by the state of North Carolina. I have been practicing since 2016. I've been licensed since 2020.
At this time, we'd like to tender Mr. Stocks as an expert in engineering.
So no.
Thank you.
All right, so just to give another general overview of the project is located at the intersection of Glen Laurel Road and Vincent Road. The proposed development has around 138 lots. During our sketch plan right now, we are going through a conditional rezoning, as was mentioned, with master plan. So that is why, or I guess the next slide. Okay, gotcha. So this is our current master plan that is currently attached to the conditional rezoning request. It is not currently within the town limits, so we will be annexing the property with the development of this project. The project will have the town of Clayton water, sewer, and electric, so we'll be a customer of the town in those areas. You can see just with the previous plan with the aerial view and this plan, it is a very unique property with multiple accesses to Glen Laurel and Vincent Road. So we are proposing two full accesses to Glen Laurel Road that are across from each other to access both sides of the property, and one access to Vincent Road. There will be a emergency fire access in kind of the northwestern corner, which is the top center of the plan where the cul-de-sac is. That will be emergency access only. The reason we have not shown a full access there is due to the nature of the alignment with the subdivision across the street. DOT, the North Carolina Department of Transportation, does not like to have roads connecting to main roads that are not aligned. It just provides just traffic confusion at those intersections. So we have looked at the opportunity or the potential to provide that as just an emergency access where the general public would not be accessing that regularly. The TIA has been prepared by Exalt Engineering, as you will hear later in the presentation from them regarding that. But you can see that the master plan, the overall plan, just has a very unique nature in regards to the shape, the stream buffers, and the environmental aspects of the property that we are trying to work with, and then the surrounding development of the golf course to the north and the subdivision that's kind of in the middle, the subdivision across the street. And then there is another recent development just south of Vincent Road where they are developing a similar, very similar nature product without the frontage widening in front of them. So we are surrounded by mostly developed property. And that kind of concludes just my general overview of the project. So I'll be available for any questions again at the end of our presentation.
Now we're going to hear from Brittany Chase with Exalt Engineering about the traffic conditions, the TIA. So we'll do the same. Brittany, can you just quickly summarize your educational background, professional licensing experience?
Sure. Good evening. My name is Brittany Chase with Exalt Engineering at 304 West Millbrook Road in Raleigh. Exalt worked on the traffic analysis requirements for the proposed development. I have a civil engineering degree from Vanderbilt University and am licensed as a professional engineer in the state of North Carolina. I've been performing traffic analyses since 2003, with the exception of a small break to stay at home with our young children. So collectively, about 13 years of experience.
Chairman, at this time, I'd like to tender Ms. Chase as an expert in traffic engineering.
So noted.
Thank you.
We want to take a moment to walk through the roadway frontage widening requirements that would be associated with satisfying UDO requirements. So the aerial shows the intersection of Glen Laurel Road and Vinson Road, with our site to the north of Vinson Road on the east and west side of Glen Laurel. The roadway system map that was taken from the town's comprehensive growth plan depicts the cross-section requirements for the roadways. So you can see that Glen Laurel and Vinson are shown in green, which designates one of 4 cross-sections listed: 2L, 3A, 3B, and 3C. And we understand that 3C is recommended for both Glen Laurel and Vinson Road. And as you can see from the slide, the 3C cross-section for Glen Laurel and Vinson requires 80 feet of right-of-way. This would include 3 lanes, 1 in each direction, and a center two-way left turn lane, bike lanes, sidewalks, utility strips, and curb and gutter on both sides, as well as some additional right-of-way outside of those sidewalks. This exhibit, north being to the right of the screen, shows the impact of the frontage widening requirements. And so the widening for half of that ultimate section, wherever there is frontage, would be required. So the darker shade on the north side of Vinson, and again along both the east and west sides of Glen Laurel, shows fairly significant extents, as the site does have a good amount of frontage. And I just wanted to note that the property on that west side of Glen Laurel is a little over 8 acres with almost 1,700 linear feet of frontage widening. So the unfortunate shape of that parcel lends to disproportionate amount of frontage widening for that size of parcel. We worked closely with DOT and the town to prepare traffic impact analysis to determine improvements needed to mitigate the impact of the proposed site. The study looked at the intersections of Glen Laurel and Powhatan Road. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it or not. Glen Laurel Road at Vinson Road, as well as the proposed site driveways on Glen Laurel Road and Vinson Road. The study showed the proposed site traffic has minimal impact on the projected delay experienced at each of these study intersections. Let me skip over that one. Based on the traffic volume at the proposed site driveways, left turn lanes are required on Glen Laurel Road and on Vinson Road into the site. So this graphic was prepared by NCDOT and just depicts where those turn lanes are. This exhibit shows those left turn lanes, the northbound and southbound left turn lanes on Glen Laurel laid out, as well as the necessary taper to tie back into that existing cross-section. And this exhibit shows the same on Vinson. And this exhibit doesn't have any improvements on it because none was required as part of the TIA in this area. That's Palmer Drive. And I'm going to go back to another exhibit. And this final exhibit shows the widening required to construct TIA improvements in red. Again, these are the improvements needed to mitigate site impact. The additional widening that would be needed to satisfy UDO requirements is then shown in blue. The extent of that widening on Vinson is fairly similar when you're comparing TIA requirements to those frontage widening requirements, but the extents of the widening on Glen Laurel are really a lot further, a lot longer when you're looking at those UDO requirements. Turn it back over to you.
Okay, so one kind of final little set of slides we wanted to share with the board is these kind of unintended consequences. Our engineering team, through their experience, is aware of these types of kind of large roadway improvements that have been required in parts of town where, as we've kind of explained earlier, are more rural in nature and maybe don't expect, full connection to be coming in the near future, and the kind of unintended roadway consequences that can come with it, and what we believe justify a more moderate set of roadway improvements. Here's one that's sort of a classic example of what can happen when one property is redeveloped and it's surrounded by other properties that are very unlikely to redevelop in the immediate future, and results in large roadway dedications and improvements on one spot or on one site, and then an abrupt shift to little to no improvements on adjacent sites. So here you can see that large hatched area as all essentially unusable right-of-way. Here's a street view of that same site. You can obviously see that, again, that large striped right-of-way area and vehicles and equipment and all sorts of stuff kind of parking in there, which is apparently quite common. You also see these kind of sharp tapering from that very wide area down to the 2-lane as you move away from the improved area. And finally, here's just another example of, again, where abuts other residential properties and site and environmental constraints that make it unlikely for that road to ultimately be extended. So you end up with the sidewalk to nowhere and the kind of parking area for trucks and vehicles. And just to put that into context with our site, whoops. I was trying to use the pointer. So just orienting you, plan north right now, that residential property that's located right to the north of where our property ends on Vincent Road is what we think of as a classic example of something that's unlikely to be redeveloped. As you can see, there's a house, a driveway located right on that property, falling outside the scope of our development, unlikely to be folded into a surrounding subdivision, would be highly impacted. And essentially what you'd find at the end of that, at the end of our site, is something that looks like what we just showed you. Similar conditions would exist on kind of plan southeast at the very bottom right corner. You can see that where that blue runs into that residential property at the very bottom right corner. Again, that's where you see that those types of conditions we just showed you, as well as if you're moving down to the bottom left along Glen Laurel, kind of all those blue areas would be this kind of dedicated areas that do not have corresponding areas across the street and would end up in kind of large, temporarily at least, unusable right-of-way. Therefore, based on the expert evidence presented this evening, we feel strongly that all the variance standards have been met, such that the requested relief from the streetscape improvement is justified. First, just to reiterate, strict application of the code, we do believe would result in unnecessary hardship because given the particular context of this property, its unique shape, its location within the town's planning jurisdiction, strict application of that transportation plan's kind of unique enhanced requirements along those green lines in the context of this unique property do become what we believe is, so burdensome that what we are proposing, which is the highest and best use of the property, is having extreme difficulties in absorbing those costs in a practical way. When that level of development barrier exists, we do believe a hardship is present. In addition, these 3C improvements that you saw along those green lines, those are the only roads in that whole area that those requirements exist for. Those requirements go substantially above and beyond what the ordinary UDC would require. That's why Andrew was mentioning developments in the area of similar size and scale, nothing close to this level of improvement being required. So therefore, that substantial difference, despite being similarly situated, and the fact that it, we believe, results in what could, quite frankly, be a less desirable roadway configuration, given the fact that it's unlikely those residential houses right adjacent to our development are ever going to continue these multi-use paths, the substantial, very, very expensive roadway improvements. It is peculiar to the property. The hardship results from multiple unique factors that exist on site, but primarily because we are located in this kind of specific intersection of those two green lines, making us one of the only rural intersections in this area that have been designated by the transportation plan to provide these substantial type 3C streetscape instead of like ordinary streetscape and what the TIA would recommend. And that's in addition to the unique shape of the assemblage, that surrounding rural context of the development in the area, and location within the larger planning jurisdiction. We think all of those are factors that set this development aside and do justify some amount of flexibility regarding those substantial 3C requirements. As you heard already, that this was a result of the application of this map, which does apply categorically to all properties that are adjacent to the highlighted roads. So is the application of this map instead of the ordinary UDO requirements that creates this hardship. And finally, we believe it is consistent with the spirit and purpose of the code. The UDC specifically acknowledged that there is some nuance, there's some flexibility that should be engaged with when we are talking about applying these transportation plan streetscape requirements. It, like I mentioned earlier, specifically empowers the board to approve alternative requirements. So simply coming in and asking for an alternate, that doesn't make it inconsistent with the code. The code provides a mechanism for relief, and that's what we're here for. In addition, the development improvements proposed, we do believe, and the TIA supports, that it addresses all traffic and safety concerns raised by the TIA. It accounts for future growth in the area. And importantly, it provides consistency with the existing and planned rural residential nature of this area. And as you saw, we believe also that it prevents potentially hazardous roadway conditions. For all those reasons, we respectfully request that you grant this variance, and the development team and engineers are happy to take any questions that you'll have. Thank you.
Any questions of the applicant? I have I'll start out the questioning. So could you basically state the specific request? Is it for all road improvements to be waived, or is it just the town's requirements for curb gutter and sidewalk to the ultimate section?
That's correct. It is just, the variance is specifically related. We're asking for basically the difference between just along the outer edge there, Vincent and Glen Laurel. All of the improvements shown, if you can work with me for a minute, I'll go back to so yeah, we'll be engaging in all of the streetscape internal to the site, no exceptions, no variances being requested. It is limited specifically to just that outer edge along Vincent, in that area, mostly along that triangle, that top triangle running along Glen Laurel. To put it in context, the kind of specific dimensions of our request are best visualized here. We're asking for the difference between the blue and the red, whereas the kind of those enhanced 3C requirements by the roadway map plan, those are shown in blue. We're asking to basically not do anything shown in blue and only do what's shown in red.
So that would be a variance to request no curb gutter sidewalk or the additional widening.
Yes, a lot of the sidewalk, the no bike lane, yeah, exactly. A lot of those things would be reduced. I think maybe Andrew or Brittany can maybe go in a little bit more detail. I know we have those close-ups of what we're providing, so they maybe can explain what's being provided there.
The request for the variance would be just. The request for the variance would just be to reduce the requirement to the DOT's approved turn lanes. So not the full frontage widening, but we would still plan to install the left turn lanes at each of the 3 entrances.
So basically, you're offering to install the requirements requested from the TIA, but not the town's curb gutter sidewalk additional paving to the street section approved by the town.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from the applicant? Or the applicant? Okay. Thank you. Okay, this time we'll open up for public comment or anyone who would like to speak for or against this item. And I would just remind you that this is a quasi judicial hearing. Basically pertinent information to this item only is only thing that we will be considering. We are not judge and jury on whether or not this subdivision gets approved. The item before us and the only thing that we are considering is the variance that's presented, and that is to variance against to not require some of the road improvements as you just heard. So I'll ask anyone to come forward who would like to speak. Please give us your name and address for the record.
Good evening, Chair, Board of Commissioner. My name is Jonathan Jacobs. I'm a town of Clayton employee, so my address is 111 East 2nd Street. As Attorney Raspberry explained, this is a unique scenario. As a staff member, I'm not here to provide any personal opinion. This is all professional judgment on behalf of the town. And I'm a licensed professional engineer with the state of North Carolina with 10 years of professional traffic engineering experience. Tonight, I'm going to speak specifically about finding of fact number 4. The requested variances are consistent with the spirit, purpose, and intent of the ordinance such that public safety is secured and substantial justice is achieved. Tonight, the applicant has explained to you that it meets the spirit, purpose, and intent of the ordinance because it allows the applicant to provide the right-of-way improvements that are consistent with the scale of development and transportation needs of the area. The section specifically that they are requesting that variance for is 155.602B. I want to reference an earlier section of 155.602 of that same section of the Unified Development Code. The defined streets is being intended for multi-purpose uses. Those multi-purpose uses are to carry motor vehicle traffic, to provide safe and convenient passageway for pedestrian traffic, and to serve as an important link to the town's drainage system. The proposed improvements, if the variance is approved, would eliminate the multi-purpose as the code defines streets. The proposed improvements would not provide a safe and convenient passageway for pedestrian traffic, as their argument tonight has stated. The applicant has also provided no evidence that supports that there are no multimodal needs in the area. The area has been defined as rural. The town's comprehensive growth plan does not define this area as rural, and that is also reflective in their pending conditional rezoning case that we are reviewing with the proposed densities that they are providing. In reference to the 2 adjacent subdivisions, those were approved prior to the Unified Development Code being updated to require said frontage improvements and the adoption of the growth plan. Additionally, the goal of the applicant has argued tonight that the goal of the road improvement requirements is to provide a safe and efficient transportation network that meets the needs of the citizens. If the variance is approved and the proposed roadway improvements will only provide the minimum required to provide safe ingress and egress to the subdivision by motor vehicle only. The proposed improvements would not provide any safety or efficiency of current or future multimodal elements such as bike lanes and shared use paths or sidewalks as outlined in the roadway system map has been presented tonight and from the 2045 comprehensive growth plan and the pedestrian plan that is adopted by town council, which has been Hal described in his presentation of the case. Our resolution approving the transportation plan references multiple documents, and that pedestrian plan is one of those documents. I want to quote the 2045 growth plan, which describes the transportation network as a vital component of any town. And as Clayton grows and develops, the transportation network will need to be enhanced to include multimodal elements. It further defines enforcement of high standards of infrastructure design and construction to enhance the active transportation network with facilities like sidewalks and greenway paths to connect trip generations such as schools, Powhatan Elementary, which is a quarter-mile away from the site, and grocery stores, allowing for greater transportation options and assisting with reducing of traffic congestion and parking demand. Specifically, strategy M1.3.3 within the 2045 comprehensive growth plan specifically states to review planned road development improvement projects and plan developments and advocate for adequate pedestrian facilities and bicycle facilities as supported in the pedestrian plan and the future transportation plans. The Town of Clayton Pedestrians Plan vision is for the Town of Clayton to have a network of high-quality walkways that connect downtown nature, the Neuse River, which is adjacent to this site, or in proximity of this site, and adjacent neighborhoods. People of all ages and abilities will have access to comfortable and convenient sidewalks and greenways, resulting in improved mobility choice, economic opportunity, and healthier lifestyle. The proposed variance would provide no connectivity between portions of this proposed subdivision that are currently divided by Glen Laurel Road, causing a significant safety impact for connectivity between the subdivision, lack of access, and proposed open space and subdivision amenities. As many of you know, on September 16th of 2021, a 16-year-old girl was struck while attempting to cross Glen Laurel Road, approximately 1 mile from the proposed location of the variance in the Summerlin subdivision, which has similar improvements or frontage improvements that the variance would allow the applicant to perform. And a similar layout as the proposed conditional rezoning, which is not to be considered as a part of this variance, there are proposed amenities that will be divided and provided on the southern, or I guess that's the northern side of Glen Laurel Road, that the residents of the cul-de-sac street and that triangular portion of the parcel would not be able to access without adequate facility. Then additionally, I want to mention that the applicant did conduct a TIA, and while none of my arguments are to diffuse the expertise or the information that Brittany Chase and her firm provided in the TIA, a traffic impact analysis does not study the impact of pedestrian and multimodal uses. Its primary focus, as noted in the TIA submitted and approved by town staff and DOT, is to analyze potential traffic impacts of proposing development to the surrounding network, and it specifically notates the proximity to Powhatan Elementary School. In summary, I want to note, and this image perfectly notates that the amount of area in blue and difference of red is fairly minimal. The two examples that the applicant provided to you are extreme cases where they were likely a 4-lane median divided facility and they were required to build about 25 feet of asphalt pavement. In this case, the largest area, including that bike lane area, is about 12 feet of additional pavement, and that would be only outside of the red areas outlined on this map. So based on the expert testimony that I'm providing you tonight as a professional engineer in the state of North Carolina, I do not believe the applicant has been able to meet the finding of fact number 4, the requested variance being consistent with the spirit, purpose, and intent of the ordinance such that public safety is secured and substantial justice is achieved. As I've mentioned, the proposed variance the applicant has requested consideration of tonight would result in minimal transportation improvements which do not meet the spirit and intent of Chapter 155.600 of the Unified Development Code. In addition, the lack of multimodal transportation elements and inter-subdivision connectivity poses a significant safety concern and will not ensure public safety is secured as intended by that finding of fact. Additionally, approval of this variance would open up a playing field for all future development in the town of Clayton to request and seek variance to remove the requirement of frontage improvements due to the amount of linear footage that their property endures. And finally, the applicant has spoken several times about flexibility, and from my professional opinion, flexibility would be conceding and providing at least a portion of the improvements, which has not been requested here tonight.
Thank you.
You do. My name is Jack McDougall. I live in Glen Laurel. The actual road widening that they're proposing here would probably help. We get a lot of people cutting through the Glen Laurel subdivision in the morning, mostly because of the layout of the school. We get the same thing in the evening because when you come up Glen Laurel Road, you can't turn left because they're lined up from the school. That seems to be a problem quite a bit. Also, the road widening they're proposing probably works better than the DOT stuff because there's no kill zone at the bottom for bicycles. And when you go down Glen Laurel Road further, there's new homes down there, and that part will probably be years before anything happens. So I would just like to say I'm in favor of giving them a variance. Thank you.
Mr. McDougall, could you just give us your address?
The address?
Yes.
3 Vista Court in Clayton.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes, sir.
I'm Derek Eberwine. I'm the president of the Glen Laurel HOA. And we certainly have an 800 plus neighborhood that basically surrounds this entire intersection here. And the first point I would like to make is that we just found out about this variance last week. We were never notified of the plan and the Zoom meeting that occurred on January 24th. So noted that, I think this process would have to start over again, or at least recognize the fact that we were never notified of this. So we're a little behind the 8 ball on providing a proper response to this. We are definitely opposed to the variance along the points of they have lots of other options on where to put this intersection. I think this new 4-way intersection is not located in a proper area. They could easily turn the 3-way intersection at Vincent Road and Glen Laurel Road into a 4-way intersection and put the cul-de-sac at the other end of the triangle and put an egress into that intersection. And that would eliminate the need for the left turn lanes on Glen Laurel Road and that. The question I have is in the paperwork, I never saw a real reason as to why they're not tapping into Tanner Way. That road comes to an end. There's a dirt road that goes to a couple parcels and properties along that dirt road, but from the plan I saw, it looked like the development did purchase most of those properties. And so tapping into Tanner's Way would be an option for them to, prevent adding another intersection along that road. And where they have the emergency egress, it would be much better for them to take the lot right next to that cul-de-sac and make that into a 4-way intersection with Palmer Drive. So there are certainly a lot better, a lot more effective ways to continue the development of this neighborhood. Okay. The other thing is they really don't, like they said, they'll put the turn lanes in, but they do not want the sidewalks or the bike trail. And I want to remind everybody that the consulting firm for the county has designated Glen Laurel Road and Vincent Road as the Mountain to Sea Trail. And that should be taken into effect. And so having preventing the variance will help to design some of the bike lanes that will be needed as the county moves forward with that Mountain to Sea Trail designation. One thing, the issue with the Vincent Road egress is going to be a tough one there because you have to be, I think it's 600 feet from the intersection. And there's not a whole lot of room there to where the intersection comes out does have an impact on the school traffic. And we cannot ever forget that the property where the elementary school now is also large enough and has been designated to also include a middle school on that property. And so we don't have a specific time frame on when that middle school is going to be built, but you're talking about doubling or tripling the amount of traffic on that road. And then really, as far as the intersection at Glen Laurel Road and Vinson Road, there was really no specific details on what the NCDOT plans are for redesigning that intersection. Are they going to, is the DOT going to widen that intersection to where you come out of Vinson Road to Glen Laurel Road and need to take that left turn? Are they going to build in a left turn lane? Because there is a blind spot coming from Powhatan Road up Glen Laurel Road right before that intersection. And that can be a problem area. I think that the developer could work with the DOT to get a great redesign of that intersection where, you know, the DOT may possibly be able to, you know, absorb the cost of moving that road into a four-way intersection to allow a nice egress. And that would prevent the left turn lanes needed for the current proposed intersection. Yeah, and then the fact that they want to eliminate the sidewalks, you know, we have Glen Laurel Road and Torrey Pines comes out right at the elementary school, and the amount of children that are walking to school will amaze you. And to not have sidewalks at this neighborhood would greatly impact, because they're so close to the elementary school. I'm sure the parents would want to walk their children to school. And then as far as the Triangle property, that was an interesting one. And like I said, if you could work with the NCDOT, they may be able to put like one of those underground walkways like they did over by NC State in the state fairgrounds to allow for pedestrian traffic to go from that little cul-de-sac onto a sidewalk on the other side on Vinson Road. So those are some options. So based on that, we are opposed to allowing any variance to this proposed construction. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Now, I may have missed it. Your address, please.
My address is 200 Hine Drive. That's H-E-I-N inside the Glen Laurel subdivision.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yep.
Anyone else?
Hey, Chairman and Board. My name is Sharon Whitley. I actually live at 317 Hereford Drive in Clayton. That's off Barber Mill Road. I actually own the property that is at 447 and 445 Glen Laurel Road, which is in that bottom right-hand corner on the, I guess, the west side of Glen Laurel Road, where Vinson and Glen Laurel intersect. I am really not sure if I am for this or against this, looking at some of the pictures. I actually came here saying I was going to be against it, but I actually might be for it if we end up with all this widening, all this extra asphalt that's going to stop right there at my property. It's already a very dangerous intersection. I have replaced mailboxes at least 3 times. The deck on that property has been destroyed twice that I've had to replace because of cars coming down Vinson Road and not seeing the stop sign. So an extra 138 houses with multiple cars, that's a lot of extra traffic that's coming down that road. I would like the DOT to figure out a plan before we start putting these houses in. I know the phase 4, the one that's closest to my property, is not supposed to be built for a few years even after they start the other. So I think it's like 2025 or later before they even start. So I would like DOT to come up with a plan if it's approved or not approved for the safety of my tenants, people coming down that road, and then obviously people that are going to be using bike trails sidewalks, those kinds of things. It is a very dangerous intersection there. And for pulling out of there at that intersection is extremely dangerous. And then you're starting to add extra roadage, extra turning lanes. You're looking for more accidents there. So anyway, thanks for letting me talk.
Thank you very much. Anyone else?
Just one quick note. Staff did receive an email this afternoon with comments. I have printed copies I'll provide to the board. Again, it is an email. There is the resident that sent it in did not mention any professional credentials. So, I will provide it to the board so that you have it. We will enter it into the record. However, it may not be able to be used as expert evidence or testimony.
Thank you.
We'd quickly like to object. That's hearsay evidence, and we wouldn't have the opportunity to cross-examine the witness. So under our due process rights, I'm going to have to object to the introduction of any evidence written or spoken from someone that's not here today to be cross-examined. Thank you, Ben. I appreciate it. Sorry. We don't know anything about this individual, what their qualifications are, or the opportunity to talk to them. So just under kind of basic procedure at Board of Adjustment hearings in North Carolina, hearsay evidence written in from individuals not present shouldn't.
Yeah, just one question for you. Approve that. So Ben, that they did not express any credentials in their.
They did not. Just wanted to make sure the board was aware that it came in, but as attorney mentioned, it likely is hearsay.
Understood. Okay. Would you like to rebut any?
Yeah, so just a few, we'll be quick. Under NCGS 160D 1402, layman opinions on traffic impacts and results are generally not permissible, competent material, substantial evidence. We'd like to kind of categorically reject to the opposition evidence regarding negative impacts on traffic-wise or kind of anything falling into that realm of expert engineering. And yeah, we'd like to just quickly cross the town, if that's okay, if you don't mind stepping up for a few questions. Thank you. Just making sure you do not contest like the results of the TIA or any, not contesting the results or findings of the approved TIA.
In regard to motor vehicles, no. The TIA did not mention any or perform any analysis regarding the multimodal elements that we're discussing tonight.
Thank you. And just to clarify that what we're talking about, this 3C improvement is a result of that Clayton roadway systems map that designates Vincent and Glen Laurel as sort of heightened streetscapes for that 3C that wouldn't and do not exist on sort of the surrounding improvements. It's just Glen Laurel and Vincent.
Can you clarify that again?
Right. I'll back it up. Just want to clarify that the roadway improvement requirements are resulting only from this designation as the green line. That is where these 3C requirements are deriving from.
Particular to the curb and gutter, sidewalk, potential storm drainage, and the additional asphalt widening that would occur outside of the tapers and the appropriate turn lanes that are proposed as shown on that red and blue map that we just moved from.
It's okay. Okay, perfect. Yeah, I think I'm going to use, I don't mean to undo what we just did. Okay, I'm curious did you analyze any recently approved subdivisions in this area that didn't fall on the green line such that these, like you talked about, more substantial improvements are required?
Can you elaborate on analyzation of those developments, please?
Yes, I'm curious if you looked at developments in the area of similar size and scale that did not fall along the green line or the 3C requirements.
Not in the immediate vicinity, because there are none that have been recently reviewed or approved since this ordinance has been adopted by the town council. But I could certainly provide a list of at least 10 projects in town that have performed frontage improvements that likely result in a similar number of lots and density. But I would need some time to look that up.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else would like to speak? Okay, hearing none, we'll close the public hearing and bring the item back to the board for discussion. Any general comments before we go through the findings of fact?
Yeah, I just, there's a couple things I would like to actually ask council a couple questions and statements that he made in his presentation, if we could, if that's appropriate.
Sure. Yeah.
Of course.
You have made a statement regarding the TIA, and you said, and I want to get a clarification on this, you said the DOT reviewed and approved the TIA, but I didn't see that in the record. I saw a recommendation, but not an approval. Can you clarify what that means?
Yes, I'll allow Brittany Chase.
And I think it'd be appropriate that we, if we're going to have a Q&A, we need to reopen the hearing. Oh, yeah. Do you have any issue with that? Okay, I'll reopen the hearing. And you can come forward.
I can come forward? Okay. Just wanted to show. So DOT reviewed the traffic study, and these are the requirements that came out of their review.
So those are intersection requirements. It doesn't speak to the road widening. Is that correct?
That's correct. I believe someone talked to DOT and they said that none of that further widening was required in terms of traffic.
As a further point of clarification, DOT does not review our UDC, doesn't?
I think some conversations were had with them. I don't
Right.
know.
They're aware of it. They review it, but they don't comment on consistency. They have a policy. They're not going to weigh in on whether or not our plan meets the town's UDO. And yes, so I believe I understand the specific variance request has not been approved by the DOT. They don't have any authority to review or grant that. What was reviewed and approved by the DOT was the TIA itself, just saying that these numbers are legitimate, our traffic counts are accurate. That's what was reviewed and approved by the DOT, not the variance request itself.
And just to further elaborate on that, these recommendations are DOT's recommendations for the turn lane storage. During the actual development, they would review and approve the actual tapers and lengths that you saw on the previous sketch. So that's kind of this is their statement of this is the storage we would require for the increased traffic flow. But then what they approved meets what they consider to be safe for the intersection, the proposed new intersections from the development.
Okay, so just to clarify that a little bit more, the specific variance request is the actual differential between what you're proposing and what the UDO is requiring. Can you quantify that? Can you give me some sort of evidence as to what that hardship might be between the two?
So the difference between the two would be the maximum extent of the widening required by DOT and the turn lane storage would be adding a center turn lane with 2 through lanes in each direction. That would be about a 6-foot widening on each side to add a 12-foot turn lane in the middle. So you would see 6 foot on one side, 6 foot on the other side, and then we would overlay the entire new developed area so it's a smooth transition. There's not just a patch on the side of the road. What the UDO requires is a full center turn lane, 2 through lanes, which would be about 36 foot if we did 12-foot lanes, and then an 8-foot bike lane on each side, which is an additional 16 feet, and then a 30-inch curb and gutter, and then I don't remember the exact width, but there's a grass strip, and then I believe it's a 5-foot sidewalk on each side of the road. So the extent of that widening is much greater than the 12 foot of additional widening for just the 2 turn lanes.
what's the current right-of-way width, do you know?
I believe it's 60 feet, and then the 3C requirement requests to bring it to an 80-foot right-of-way.
So let me get again, I'm just trying to run with the numbers you just gave me. So you're telling me that there's a current 60-foot road right-of-way, and your proposal is to make that a 72-foot right-of-way with the addition of 6 foot on either side, as opposed to our UDO's section here that you showed as evidence at 80 foot. So we're really talking about an 8-foot difference in the right of way. Is that
so? No, we would not propose to change the right of way if we were only doing the turn lanes. So that 6-foot widening on either side would be specific to the asphalt width. The right of way width would not need to change to accommodate that 6 foot of road widening on each side of the road. The right of way could remain the same. So to accommodate the 3C widening, the town requests a right-of-way that's 80 foot. So the right-of-way and the actual pavement width are two different measurements.
okay? So that if you're claiming hardship on this, you must have put an economic value of some sort on this to determine that it might be a hardship for your development. Is that correct?
Yes, and I did not specifically run any of the calculations or the cost estimates for what that would be. That was just not my role in the project.
Do you all have that?
There's differing numbers, but it's somewhere north of $1.2-ish million, I believe.
Okay, and how many lots are you subdividing this into?
Yeah, let's hope, we'll get back. We'll get back.
138.
I have a question for you while you're still up here. So this TIA that you're talking about, it's proposing that it's rural, but what you're talking about is, and correct me if I'm wrong, annexing the property and taking advantage of the town's utilities. And so it will no longer be a rural area. It's going to be part of the town. You're going to be enjoying the town's utilities, correct?
That would be correct, but the nature of the surrounding streets that we're connecting to are a shoulder section road. So there would be a stark difference between a road that has a ditch on either side. Within, we're introducing sections that are disjointed sections, a short section here, a long section here, half the section on the other side of the road, and then half of Vincent Road, where we're introducing now a wider section with a bike lane and a turn lane, and then a sidewalk that ultimately has no connection point.
You are aware that that's part of the Mountain to Sea Trail as well, as stated by one of the
I
witnesses?
did not know that until this meeting.
I see. And have you ever driven that road between the hours of 5 and 6 in the afternoon?
During those hours, no.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I'll allow you to come back.
Can I interject that the value that they gave you be considered hearsay, as it was not included at all in the report that they provided to homeowners and HOAs? That it is, they could have said 10 million. They could have said $100, but.
Take it under advisement.
Thank you.
But they have been sworn as expert testimony, so. Okay, any other questions of the applicant before we close the hearing?
Just one quick final point. Definitely interested in hearing the board's full discussion. We just ask that before any final motion is made, a kind of final chance to touch base based on the conversations, to propose the possibility of just the ability to respond. We don't want y'all to vote without the ability to come back up here and maybe suggest possible revisions based on the comments that you all make.
Well, we're going to close the hearing. I would say that if we add conditions, that we would ask if that's satisfactory. But once we close the hearing, we're going to make a decision.
Absolutely. So we would just tell the board that if you do have conditions or possible amendments to that kind of proposed plan, whether it's making some additions or coming somewhere closer to compliance, if there are some identifiable things that you could maybe want the development team to go back, circle up, see what's possible, and bring an amended plan back to you. If you're at the point where you're saying, you know, that's what we'd want to see, we would definitely be open to that. So
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
If we have an amendment, we'll definitely ask for your concurrence before we vote on it. No, but I'm about to close.
All right, well, before you close the hearing, one more question. On the southern edge of the development plan, there are a couple outlets that seem to dead end. Can you explain what the plan for those outlets are?
Are you referring to the two stub streets to the plan south here?
That's correct.
All right, so those are two just stub streets that are required to connect to adjacent properties for future development. If that ever happened, that's also a requirement of the UDO.
Thank you.
We all good? Okay, we'll close the public hearing and bring the discussion back to the board. Is there any general discussion before we look at the individual findings of fact?
So, Mr. Chair, I was breaking down the numbers from what we heard. So they're saying 1.2 mil. You know, I put that in the 138 for 138 townhomes, and that breaks it down to $8,600. So before even that homeowner buys that house, they have to realize that they have to put an additional $8,600 just to move in that neighborhood, I believe, from what they're asking. And it says that the subdivision applicant, which I'm assuming is the homeowner, should be responsible for cost and installation of all right of way. And they're saying, well, you know, that's going to cost 1.2 mil. And we don't even know if that's information accurate or not. It could be more, it could be less. We just don't know.
Yeah, 8,700 bucks a lot, but we also didn't ask how much the homes are going to be priced at either. So as a percentage of the home value, it may or may not be material to the overall cost of what they're going to market these for.
As a resident of the town of Clayton, I think that's a bargain. I enjoy the Clayton Center for free. And if I canceled my membership at the YMCA, that was $103 a month, you know, and I enjoy that for the rest of the time that I live here. So I think $8,600 is a bargain to live in the town of Clayton.
There's, you know, that last question, I'm actually was a little surprised at the answer. So one of the things that's interesting about this variance request is that it's a degree, right? They're asking for some relief on improvement away from what the UDO is requiring, but at the same time, there's a requirement within the UDO they're complying with to allow for future development on that southern parcel. So in a sense, it feels like if the variance were granted, it'd be a kicking the can down the road, and we're going to have the same discussion whenever this southern parcel may or may not be. I mean, it's clearly planned for future development here by this. So it's just we have a discussion now or later or both times.
Well, and now I would like to say it's being taken on by the developer who is benefiting greatly from this land. And later it's going to be taxpayers of the town of Clayton who are going to be funding this. So, I mean, and in the interim, the people who live there are going to be enjoying all the benefits of the town of Clayton, and the developers already walked away, you know. So I believe that they should have some skin in the game and having to add this many people to the town.
Do we have, or should we consider an option for fee in lieu? Is that, and corresponding to that possibility of ensuring the right-of-way accommodates future if and when that occurs, so that the compensation is accrued now.
I think that is an option for the UDO. I think, and I may be speaking out of turn here, but I believe the UDO allows staff that discretion to accept the fee in lieu. To answer your question, I think we can consider that. I personally would not think a fee in lieu is appropriate in this case, but I think we can certainly consider it.
And that begs the question, why for my edification?
So in my opinion, and from what I've heard in testimony, the goal with the growth plan, incorporating this transportation plan as we have it and the improvements, is number one. Number two is, where do you start with improvements? You've got 3 Mile road section. Do I widen 100 feet in the middle of it? No, it makes no sense. But where you start is at intersections. And you work back as development occurs. I'm trying to find an argument in my mind that would substantiate this variance, and I honestly cannot. I can't see it. This is the ideal place to start widening improvements to the ultimate section with a curb gutter, sidewalk, and for a several hundred feet, both sides. So we're not getting just one side, we're getting very useful widening. And for pedestrians, turn lanes, it'll accommodate the turn lanes for the intersection, that's where they're so desperately needed. We're right down the road from a school, and cost. I understand development is expensive, but cost in my mind is not a hardship. So that's my 2 cents, probably more than what you asked, but I do see where, in certain circumstances, free and loose are appropriate, but I think you got to start somewhere, and you start at intersections.
And I would like to say one of the reasons that, we have this is for safety. And Ms. Whitley's property, I think, begs this question of, or it answers the question of why the variance should not be approved. She said that people overrun Vincent Road. I've driven this road 100 times. I know this area well. A curb there would actually prevent people from overrunning into her property. This is the whole reason that we have this, for safety. Or not the whole reason, but partially. And then to hear that a child was struck there and knowing that a school is there, additional sidewalks will aid in this. I agree with you. I can't think of a single reason to grant a variance in this case. This is exactly what we want our town's UDO to do, is to protect people and to create safe environments. Aesthetics is one thing, but we have 2 instances, people running into her yard, which this would prevent, and a child that was struck there, and there's sidewalks near a school now. I can't see why we would ever do this.
Discussion. I would note that, and I know it's mentioned by the town staff, that our transportation plan that was approved with the growth plan just last year before, these 2 roads do appear on that plan, and that is what we were after. And I say we, I was on the growth plan committee. That's what we were trying to do, is identify streets, their ultimate section, and the improvements that Dan would be looking for. So, this is what the growth plan was shooting for. So, if there's no discussion, I'd like to go down one by one again on the findings of fact to maybe generate any discussion or any questions that may need discussing or brought up. Finding fact number 1, unnecessary hardship would result from the strict application of the ordinance. It shall not be necessary to demonstrate that in absence of the variance, no reasonable use can be made of the property. Any discussion there? All right. Finding fact number 2, the hardship results from conditions that are peculiar to the property, such as location, size, and topography. Hardships resulting in personal circumstances, as well as hardships resulting from conditions that are common to the neighborhood or general public, may not be the basis for granting a variance. Any questions, discussion? All right, finding fact number 3, the hardship did not result from actions taken by the applicant or the property owner of the act of purchasing property with knowledge that circumstances exist that may justify the granting. The variance shall not be regarded as self-created hardship. Any discussion? All right, finding fact number 4, the requested variances are consistent with the spirit, purpose, and intent of the ordinance, such as the public safety is secured and substantial justice is achieved. I would just note that hearing from staff, that is their primary objection to this, and obviously at this intersection, this particular intersection, not granting this variance would allow for safer pedestrian movement as well as vehicular movement, in my opinion, based on the testimony that we've heard. So if there's no other discussion, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to deny the variance application 2022-192-BAR, project name Summer Glen subdivision variant.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
We have a motion to second. Any discussion? All right. Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right, moving to item number 5, old business. Any old business from staff?
I'll just provide a couple of quick updates. For those of you that are on the Codify Clayton Steering Committee, hopefully you saw the email, I think it was on Friday that I sent you, that the meeting we were supposed to have next Wednesday has been canceled. It's taken us a little bit longer to get through the draft chapters than we expected. So just be ready. The chapters that you'll be getting, chapter 3, which is chapter 4, which is the list of uses, is over 100 pages long. And it's a use standards chapter. So I believe I think our consultant said we're at 160 uses. So that'll be a fun reading for y'all. So again, where our goal is to have the meeting in May as scheduled. So with that, you would get those draft chapters in about 2 weeks or so, and you would have about 2 weeks to review those before that meeting. So more to come on that, but that is our current schedule, and we're hoping to be able to stick to that. Also want to let you know, as far as department staffing, we were fully staffed for a matter of a week. We are no longer fully staffed, and so we are in the process of reposting our Planner 2 position. We did have it filled, but unfortunately it just didn't work out. So we are hoping to get it filled, get it posted here soon and work to get it filled hopefully this summer. And we are also going to be hosting an intern this summer as well. That position is currently posted on the town's website, and we hope to begin interviews for that probably next week or so.
So being that next steering committee, knowing that the next one is actually canceled, the next one will be what?
Then the new next one will be May. I believe it would be your normal May Board of Adjustment meeting date is the next steering committee meeting. And then we would have one the following Monday, which is the normal May Planning Board meeting date. And then one also that week on Wednesday. So they'll be a lot closer together. So you'll be reviewing things a little bit overlapping, but that's our current schedule. We may end up needing to go into June with a meeting or two, but we're really trying to wrap this up for the Memorial Day holiday.
Understood. Okay. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Moving on to number 6, new business. Any new business to come before us? Other than staff? Anything from the board? All right. Moves us down to item number 7, adjournment. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Have a motion to have a second.
Second.
Have a motion to second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Good evening. Thank you.